You'll never guess what I want to talk about today. I could give you 100 guesses and you would never guess. We've been talking about re-understanding, remembering ancient ways of thinking and how important that is. When you read the scriptures, it's not as meaningful if you don't have the mindset of the people who wrote them and the people who they were written to, right? If we bring our modern understanding of the universe to writings that were written by people and to people who lived in the cosmos, there's a disconnect. And so I want to talk about fasting. And not, this is not comprehensive because there's different kinds of fasting. You know, there's the famous 40-day fast. I've never done that, and I'm not going to talk about that because I don't know the first thing about it. So I have no authority to speak on a 40-day fast or a 30-day fast or a 10-day fast or a 5-day fast because I've never done any of those. And I'm sure they have their place and their meaning and their benefits, and I don't know what any of those are because I've never done it. What I have done is fast 1 day a week for at least 3 years or more, probably. I don't know exactly. Do you remember, Allison? It's been a long time. And Allison's doing it too with me. So I feel like I know a lot about that. I've learned a lot about it, and it's not something that I just learned after doing it one time or 2 times or 50 times. It's something I've learned over the years. It's been a slow developing understanding. It's been a process, and there are things that you can only learn through process. You can't learn it by reading it. You can't learn it by doing it one time. You can only learn some things by submitting yourself to a process, which I've done. And if some of you have done a 40-day fast, I don't know if any of you have, probably you have. Okay. I would be interested to hear about that, to hear your experience, what you learned, what the benefits were, what the difficulties were, and all that. I imagine I kind of know what the difficulty is. Freaking hungry. Do what? Okay. So I'm not talking about the 40-day fast because I don't know anything about it because I'm weak and selfish and all that stuff. But I do know about fasting one 24-hour period. I mean, that's the goal. Sometimes I cheat. I'll tell you a story. When I was a teenager, I don't even remember how this came about or exactly the circumstances, but whatever church I was involved with, it was before this church. The youth were going to do this fast, a 1 day fast. Was it 1 day or 3 days? I think it was probably 1 day. And I hated it. I hated it. It was so terrible. It was so uncomfortable. I thought I was going to, I mean, I'm such a weenie. I was such a weenie. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was dying. And I cheated. I snuck off and ate a fried bologna sandwich. Probably the last time I ate bologna. I don't eat bologna, hadn't eaten bologna in decades. But I snuck off and ate, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the guilt, the shame. I'm serious. It's like, this is not that hard. Why can't I do this? But, I didn't make it. And I'll just tell you, I don't always make it every week. Sometimes I just got to get something in my belly. But often I do make it. Most of the time I do. And I want to say this about fasting, particularly about what I know about fasting with the 1 day a week, the 1 day fast. I think there's a I think there's an implication that fasting is about suffering, and I think that is probably we probably inherited that idea. Am I wrong? I mean, is that a thing? Is that okay? I think we probably inherited that from pagan thought, from superstitious thought. If I suffer enough, God will hear me, or if God wants me to suffer, and then I'll have some kind of increased magical power to have my prayers answered, and so forth. And I think that's incorrect. And I actually I'll make the claim that I believe that fasting is the opposite of that. I don't believe it's about suffering. I believe it's about stop suffering. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When I first started, and I don't even remember now, it's been a long time, years. I don't remember why I started doing it exactly. I just I just had this feeling, this kind of intuition that I should do it. And I started doing it. And when I first started doing it, I was right back as a teenager. I was dying. I was the most put upon, pitiful, suffering person in the world. And every moment I thought about it, I thought about I can't eat. I can't eat anything. I'm I'm not gonna eat anything. Okay, I'm still not eating anything. Okay, I'm still not eating anything. I'm not gonna eat. And that was that was consumed me. It was a sheer act of will to not eat, but I did it. It was suffering. It was suffering because I'm weak and I'm selfish and I'm pathetic. But I'll tell you what happened. I suffered the first time, and I suffered the second time, and I suffered the third time, and I suffered the fourth time, and I suffered a little bit less the fifth time. And the sixth time, I suffered again. And the seventh time, I suffered a little less. And I suffered less, and I suffered less, and I suffered less. And then I stopped thinking about it, and I did it automatically. I began to look forward to it. It began through the process to be freedom, freedom from having to think about what I'm going to eat. You thought, that's a stupid thing. Well, yeah, I'm a stupid guy. I remember when I worked at one of my first professional jobs after I graduated college, I worked for this corporation, and you have friends at work, and it's lunchtime. It's time to go to lunch, and we would always go out to lunch. And we got into this thing of going to lunch. Well, where are we going to go? I don't know. Where you want to go? I don't know. What do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? And we kind of got into this rut where it wasn't even pleasurable anymore. It was just like a thing we had to do. And we would, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where you want to go? You want to go to Jenkins again? I don't know, whatever. And we actually created, I think I created a wheel of lunch. And we would put all of our regular haunts that we would go to, and we'd spin the wheel, and that's where we would go for lunch. The wheel of lunch. Because it became literally a burden. Just like, this is what we got to do, and none of us were excited about it, and we just fell into the rut. Well, fasting is freedom from that. You don't have to worry about it. It's a one less thing you got to do in your day is figure out, what am I going to cook? What am I going to make? What am I going to eat? And I don't even I eat the same things over and over, and I'm not even excited about it. There's something exciting about being free from that, and just, I don't have to eat today. And I look forward to it, and I look forward to the way it makes me feel. There's countless health benefits for fasting for 24 hours. There's actually much more benefit in fasting a day and a half. Um, you you get into what's it called? Autophagic state. Anyway, I can't talk about that because I don't do it. I do 24 hours. There's lots of health benefits for fasting for a day, and I won't go into them because you have the internet at home and you can look that up, and you probably already know anything I would say anyway. I'll just say one thing, probably the most beneficial health aspect of fasting for 24 hours is what it does for your insulin resistance. And insulin, you probably are aware, insulin is like it's like a fire extinguisher. When a fire, if you're burning a candle, that's fine. But if the candle falls over and the table catches on fire, you need a fire extinguisher, and that's what your body does. When you eat a bunch of sugar, it's a fire in your metabolism, and insulin comes and squashes it. The problem is, if you do that too often, which many of us do, your fire extinguisher runs out of juice. And the fire extinguisher is in your body, your insulin production recharges itself slowly over time. But if you use it too much, you outrun the recharge and you become insulin resistant. And when that happens, your insulin goes out of control and you become pre-diabetic and you become diabetic and all kinds of bad things happen. Insulin resistance, to me, is one of the most important health aspects that we should be aware of and act accordingly, because it's diabetes is straight from hell. It's the worst. It's the worst. It rots your body. It just rots your cells. It's a fire out of control in your body. And you know what fire does? It destroys cells. It makes things not operate. It'll kill you. Sugar will kill you. Sugar is poison. I've always told my kids that. Sugar is poison. It's just aging powder is all it is. Oh, I want to be older. Drink my Coke, or eat my white bread sandwich because I want to be older quicker. I want to be sick. So what fasting for 24 hours gives your fire extinguisher, your insulin system, time to recharge so that it's there when it's needed occasionally. It's there to be used occasionally. And when we slam our systems constantly with sugar, we outrun the recharge, and there's nothing left to put the fire out. Enough about that, because I'm not a medical person. But I feel that. I feel the benefits of that weekly, and I look forward to that feeling. I feel recharged. I feel strong. I feel in control. So fasting, aside from the health benefits, which are numerous, there are psychological, spiritual benefits. Jesus famously said, the disciples were having trouble casting out a certain demon in the scriptures, in the Gospels. And Jesus said, oh, yeah, well, this kind only happens with prayer and fasting. So fasting has a spiritual component. It's mysterious. I don't pretend that I can explain it completely. I don't know that anybody can exactly, but here's what it does. I'll tell you what I do know, because there's a lot I don't know, but here's what I do know. And this is back to the way we postmodern materialist people, which we all are, we can't help it. The behavioral psychologists call this your executive function. I was searching for that word. Executive function. It's the part of you that is the adult, because we have different urges inside of us, different voices, so to speak. And I don't believe in multiple personalities, but our psyche is kind of a conversation between, I know what I should do, I know what I want to do, I know what feels good, I know what I should avoid. It's sort of a conversation between all these things. The executive function is like the adult in the room inside your brain, the one that knows, well, listen, guys, we're not going to do that. I know we want to do that. We're not going to we can't do that. That doesn't make sense. Executive function has to do with your will. It has to do with your volition. It has to do with logic, reason, common sense. It's the voice inside you that is the calm, wise one that knows what you should be doing. I should stop looking at TikTok. Okay, I'm going to stop looking at TikTok. I don't want to. I want to just keep, uh, but I know that's not good. So I'm gonna go get a book off the shelf and I'm going to read a book. I'm going to make myself do that because I know I should, and I am happy that I did because it helps my brain. So executive function, when they test people, they put people through different tests. They give them tasks to do, and they scan their brains while they're doing it. Executive function seems to live in your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that lights up when you listen to and heed the voice of this adult in your brain. Executive function. And like anything else, and this is completely biblical, by the way, the Bible doesn't say executive function anywhere, but it tells you, in other words, to develop your executive function, to listen to that wise voice, to gather the knowledge that you have and filter it through the wisdom that you've achieved, and do that instead of what your body wants at the moment or your emotions want at the moment. Executive function is built and strengthened through use, repeated use. You can read about executive function and you won't develop it. You can make a decision and power through something and exert your will over your being and do something or not do something, avoid something one time, and it doesn't strengthen your executive function. Just like when I fasted that first week, that first day of that first week, it didn't produce anything different in me. Like I said, it was suffering. It was just suffering. But like anything else, executive function is built through submitting to the process, through, you can work out one time and your body looks exactly the same as it did the day before. Exactly. Maybe worse. Because you're sore, you're unhappy, it's not fun. I hate working out. I hate exercise, but I do it not every day. I exercise 5 days a week. And I hate it every time. I just don't like it. I hate it less because I have submitted myself to the process and my body has responded over time. It didn't respond the first day. It didn't respond the first week. I looked exactly the same. I still look pretty much the same. I felt the same, but after 6 months, 8 months of exercising 5 days a week, I felt totally different. I felt much better Executive function's the same way. When you repeatedly make a habit of submitting to this process of, Lord, I know that you know that I know that you know what I would rather be doing right now, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what I know that you know that I know that you know I should be doing instead. And I don't feel it. I don't want to do it. I don't look forward to it. I'm just going to do it because I know it's the right thing to do. And I get those values not from myself. We don't make our own values. I don't care what anybody says. I'm firmly convinced we do not make our own values. We get them from outside of ourselves, no matter what they are. And different people have different values, but they come from outside. And so you get to determine, you get to decide what values you're going to submit yourself to. And I choose, ideally, to align my values with Christ. It's a process. It doesn't happen the first time. In fact, it's suffering when you first start. You know this. But there is a beautiful freedom that comes with repeated, habitual submission to the values that Christ has given us. It's beautiful. And it's not suffering as a process. It's suffering if you do it every now and then. It's suffering if you do it once a year, if you do it once a month. It's suffering because it's counter to what I want to do. But by submitting to this process over and over and over and over, it becomes not suffering. The suffering goes away, just like exercising. If you go and you haven't lifted any weights and you go to the weight room and you just tear it up, man, the next day you're not going to be able to walk. And it's going to be suffering. But if you do that repeatedly, your body becomes accustomed to it and habituated to it. And then it feels good. So fasting is not about suffering. There is suffering at the beginning, but you get through that part. And you get to the point where you look forward to it. I look forward to, I'll just say, this is probably wrong to say, probably exposes my immaturity, but I feel proud of myself. Oh, you shouldn't feel proud of yourself. Okay, whatever. But I do. I feel in control. I feel I'm not a slave to this eating food. I'm not a slave to food. I don't have to do it. And that is and what it does is it builds a tool that you have in your toolbox, because there's going to come a day where something very important happens in your life. It could be a bad thing, it could be a good thing. But it's going to be a thing where taking time out to eat or to decide what you're going to cook or decide where you're going to eat is a very low priority. There's things that can happen occasionally in your life where that's a distraction. And if you don't have this tool of, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to go 24. That's easy. I used to kind of dread the Day of Atonement because you're supposed to afflict your soul and not eat for 24 hours. I don't dread it anymore. It's just another day for me now. I mean, in a sense, it's another day as far as there's no suffering. There's no physical suffering because I'm habituated to it. I know how to do it. I don't even think about it. I can do it automatically. I can just play that card and walk away. And that frees me up to consider the importance of that day. and not think about bologna sandwiches. I don't even think about it. I'm free to meditate on the deeper things of what that day means. Why am I talking about Day of Atonement? We're not even at Passover yet. I want to give you time, if you're so inclined, to build up this tool, to build up this ability to not eat any food for 24 hours and it not bother you, and frees your mind, frees your soul to pay attention to other things more deeply. And I think that's the point of the Day of Atonement. What we're talking about here is a subset within the category of sacrifice. And I'll say sacrifice is, if not the most fundamental, it's one of the, I think it's the most fundamental, but what do I know? I believe that the process of sacrifice is one of the most fundamental ways that we can experience being human to the full extent. Human versus animal. You know, animals don't really know how to sacrifice. You can argue with me about that. Well, I had a dog that knew that if it jumped up, this is actually a true story. A friend of mine has this little, I can't remember what kind of dog it is, but they're famously intelligent. And this dog was very much food oriented, and it would sneak around and play tricks on my friend and, you know, get the food off the counter. It would jump up there. And the dog was smart enough to know that if it jumped up on the table and snatched some food, it was going to go straight in the crate for a number of hours. The dog knew this, and the dog calculated, it's worth it. And the dog would play tricks. The dog would distract my friend, you know, go over here and do something and get their attention on something else and run in there and get the food. I will say that is a marginal exception. Animals in general don't understand sacrifice. They understand, right now, I want what I want, and that's what I'm going to do. And to the degree that we don't incorporate sacrifice into our everyday experience, we are, to that degree, animals, slaves to our passions, slaves to our wants, slaves to our emotions. And that is not the way of Christ. I'll just tell you. That's not what the scriptures teach, to just do what I want to do in the moment, what feels good, or avoid what I don't want to do in the moment, avoid the emotions that I don't want to confront, or avoid the situations that are going to cause me anxiety. That's animalistic. And Christ calls us up from that. We are animals, scientifically, part of the animal kingdom. But Christ says, no, you're different. You're different than your cat who only thinks about himself. He's such a brat. He only thinks about himself. And you are to be different. You are to submit yourself to process that's going to be painful at first. There's going to be suffering, and you're going to work through that, and it won't hurt anymore. It'll be freedom. The freedom of Christ. I'm free to obey him. I'm free to do the higher things that I know should be done. I'm free to confront things, even though I'd rather not. It only comes through process. It only comes over time. Who else has noticed? You heard Catherine sing up here a few minutes ago. Who else has noticed that Catherine has has uh, developed her voice.
I definitely noticed that.
Uh-huh.
I was going to say something to her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, not just her voice, but her confidence.
Her confidence, she has become, put your fingers in your ears, Catherine. I don't want you to get the big head. But it's a good example because Catherine could always sing. Catherine's always had a pretty voice. We've always said it. But this is different. She has taken command of her voice, and she's a little louder, and she's a little bit more on pitch, and there's a little bit of a deeper timbre in her voice. And I'll just say, Catherine was born, not all of us are, with a pleasant sounding singing voice. Catherine was born with that. But what you heard this morning, she wasn't born with. She's developed that, and the way she developed that was in the woodshed. She and Nehemiah have been working on the record, and Catherine's been singing her head off, right? For hours and hours and hours and days and days and days. She's put the reps in, just like lifting weights. She's put the reps in. Not once. She could always sing once, and it was pretty. It was good. It was really good. But this is different. This is higher. It's a higher thing because she's submitted herself to this process of just hammering, hammering, hammering over and over and over. And I'll tell you, young children, something that I wish somebody had told me, and they probably did, and I probably didn't listen. The things that you want in life, the things that you want to be able to do, the things that you want to be able to accomplish, are going to come not from the talents that you were born with. In fact, I'll say, sometimes natural born talents can be a hindrance to achieving things because you can be lulled into believing that my potential is locked into what I was born, the talents that I was naturally born with. And I'm going to say that's a lie. You want to do something big, you want to do something important, doesn't matter what it is. I want to be a writer. I want to write poetry. I want to write books. I want to be able to sing. I want to do parkour. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. The way you get there is doing it over and over and over and over. It's why I'm not a great guitar player, because I never did the things that you have to do to get there. I never, I messed around with it. I learned some chords, but I never did what really good guitar player. Well, I never did what Phil Keaggy did, which is going, huh? I never chopped my finger off. That's where I went wrong. I never took my guitar into my bedroom, which, if you read any interviews of any guitar heroes, every one of them did this, which I didn't do. Take their guitar into their bedroom, lock the door, and just play and play and play and play and play and play and play, and go to bed and get up the next day and play that guitar and play it 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 and fail and fail and fail and fail and mess around and fuddle around and miss things and be bad and suffer and suffer and suffer, and then stop suffering because you build the competence. And that's the only way. All the guitar heroes, they were born with some amount of talent, and the talent is the least important part of it. The most important part is submission to the process and repeated hammering on this thing that seems undoable, seems impossible. My fingers don't know how to do that, but they can learn. And you have to be okay with a lot of failure, no matter what it is. You have to be okay with suffering and failure and work through it, because the suffering will cease and the failure will cease. And then you come to a place where the competence becomes a tool that you can just whip out whenever you want and use it. And if you haven't put that work in ahead of time, you don't have that tool. And it's like, it's time for my big solo. And I've had this dream. You ever had that dream? I'm up on stage. I'm in a band, and I don't know what in the world this song is. I don't know the chords. I don't know. I don't know what to do. In real life. Yeah, it's terrifying, and I have this dream occasionally, because I'm a musical person. I'm just not that good. I'm just not that good at it. But I am inside myself, I'm a very musical person. So I have these dreams like, oh, this is so cool. I'm in this band, and we're about to kick off this great song, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm in that moment. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Because I hadn't put the work in. I hadn't submitted to the failure and the suffering. I hadn't offered up a proper sacrifice. Sacrifice is the most fundamental means by which we become most human. And that's the goal. And people will tell you that it's not. Oh, humans are rats. Humans are terrible. You don't want to be human. You want to be whatever. When Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, the world fell apart for them. And when your world falls apart, you start looking for comfort. And the comfort that they found was a sacrifice. That's why I say it's the most fundamental. It's right there in Genesis, in the first parts of Genesis. The first thing they did was look around for a sacrifice, and they found a plant. And they broke that plant off, sacrificed it, and covered themselves. And God came and saw what they did, and he said, "That's cute, not good enough." And God sacrificed an animal and covered them. And God's like, this will do for now. It's not perfect, but this is step one. What you did was, nice, but no. All sacrifices are not equal. You can offer up an improper sacrifice, and sacrifice is not necessarily suffering. Improper sacrifices breed resentment. Improper sacrifices breed resentment. Improper sacrifices breed resentment. Cain and Abel offered up their sacrifices. Cain's sacrifice was insufficient, and God rejected it. And God said, Cain, I'll give you a second chance, just like Adam and Eve. They tried, didn't quite get there. They kind of had the right idea, but it was improper. And I covered them with a proper sacrifice, at least the beginnings of what would be a proper sacrifice. Ultimately, that would be Christ. So Cain had an opportunity to repent. It says it right there in the Bible. Cain, if you'll do well, offer up a proper sacrifice, we can continue. And Cain became resentful. Well, you accepted Abel's sacrifice. That idiot. Why is he so special? Why does he get all the good stuff? He sacrificed and I sacrificed, and mine wasn't accepted. It's not fair. I'm going to kill him. And he did kill him. That's why you must be, listen, how dumb are we to think that was them? I'm immune to that. I would never become resentful from offering up an improper sacrifice. Yes, you will. You will. I have. I have. I had to go through all this suffering, and for what? For nothing. Improper sacrifice. And sacrifice is not something that is put on you. It's something you embrace. It's something that you offer up. It's not something that is pushed down on you. So important to analyze your sacrifices. Is this a proper sacrifice? Is this acceptable to God? Because it's not necessarily so. Christ was perfected through the things he. So therefore, all suffering is going to make me like Christ. No. All suffering is not. If Nehemiah stubbed his toe accidentally. Now it's up to him what he does with that. Just because suffering or tragedy is visited on you involuntarily does not necessarily lift you up to Christ. It has to be a proper sacrifice, and some sacrifices you get to choose. How am I going to react to this? Am I going to become resentful because this unfair thing happened to me, or am I going to accept it and submit myself to the process? So this subject, fasting, like everything I talk about, there's a folder on my computer desktop, a little folder, a little icon, you know what I mean? And it's labeled fasting. And it's been there for 2 years or more. Because as I think about things and gather information, it's not for anybody but me. It's just the way that I process things. So I've got a folder that's labeled fasting. I've got a folder that's labeled mountains. I've got a folder that's labeled bread. Because, I talked about bread for like 2 years. I'm off that now. But I've got a little folder called fasting. And I've been thinking about this and gathering bits and pieces and putting them in that folder. For me, it's my way of journaling, I guess. And in that process, I discovered something that I never expected, never in a million years expected. And I'll tell you what it is. and it might be controversial. And this is not a thus says the Lord situation right here. This is my opinion. And if it's valuable to you, take it and integrate it. And if it's not, if you disagree, I'd be willing to hear you out, or or just ignore it. Just ignore me. But I'll tell you what I discovered, and it was recently, because I've been on this thing about ancient people thought about things, thought about the world in a different way than we do. And I'm not making the claim that theirs was better or ours was better, or we shouldn't think the way we think. We can't help to think the way we think. We were born and brought up in a material world, material philosophy. We understand cause and effect. We understand cells, and I say we, humanity. So, with that understanding in mind, that the scriptures were written by and to people who thought about the world differently than we do. So, it would be important, you would naturally follows, it would be important to sort of rediscover how they thought, so you could better understand what the scriptures were trying to even say to them and to us. And so on this topic of fasting, I began to think about, well, what are the sort of mystical, mysterious implications, the symbolic implications of your belly being empty? And what does the scripture say about our bellies and our bowels? I don't even like that word, but that's the word the scripture uses. I don't like to think about it. You know why? Because I'm a materialist. And I immediately picture a large intestine. And I don't like that. It's disgusting. But that's not what people thought about back when Proverbs and Psalms were written. And, I've got some scriptures that talk about, from my, it talks about my, the, my bowels of compassion is a phrase that's used. They weren't picturing the large intestine. Okay. That meant something else to them. And it's something like, maybe I'm the only one. I don't think I am. But when I feel anxiety, I don't feel it here. And I don't feel it here. I feel it right here. And when I feel profound grief, I feel it right here in my belly, in my bowels. And here's the thing. Neither understanding is right or wrong, but it's important to understand them both. There's so much value in understanding the world in a material way. But if that's the only way that you understand it, you're going to miss so much. And Christians for hundreds of years have tried to retrofit the teachings of Scripture with our material understanding, to the point that we try to prove scientifically how, but this, the Scriptures say that, at the Battle of Armageddon, there's going to be blood that's up to the horses' reins. That's how deep the blood is from all the bloodshed. And people have gone, well, the scriptures have to be true materially, so this is how that could happen, And I think Steve one time taught about, he actually did some rudimentary math on that, and he was like, you know how many people would have to die for the blood to fill that valley up to that point? It's more people than have ever lived on the earth, okay? That was not a material claim. Not a material claim. It's way more important than that. Who cares how deep the blood was? Exactly. How many centimeters and millimeters is the blood? Who cares? It was a lot of blood, okay? That's the point. A lot of blood. For sure. So what I discovered, this thing that I never thought I was not looking for it, and was surprised and a little jolted by it, was that we tend to think of our universe and our place in the universe as our mind and our heart. The mind is where you think, it's the seat of your will, it's the seat of reasoning, of volition, of understanding. And then the heart is where we feel. The heart is where intuition lives. The heart is where our spiritual connection lives. It's where our unconscious understanding, my heart led me to this. My heart, it's not an intellectual process. It's more of an intuitive process, and that's my heart. And so when I read the scriptures and it talks about my heart, that's what I think of. And I don't think that's what the ancient people who wrote and read those things thought. In the scriptures, when it talks about the heart, the ancient people in biblical times, particularly the Hebrew people, what they thought of, their concept of what happens in the heart, is what we think of in our head. It's jolting to me. And what we think of as our heart, they called their belly or their bowels. Makes a big difference, guys. When the scripture says, do something with all your heart, what is that? And I've discovered that what I assumed that meant was probably not what the readers of those scriptures back in the day understood. Is that clear? I mean, this is hard to, it's hard to, this feels to me like I'm trying to get on a merry-go-round and it's going, and I'm trying to figure out, where do I jump? When do I jump? And how do I, it's not a static thing to try to relate this. But where we materialists think of intellect, mind and will, volition, and emotions, intuition, subconscious leadings and leanings, spiritual matters, the ancients thought intellect, volition, cognition, emotion, yes, intuition, spirit, in here. That's, if I'm right, I think I am. The scriptures take on a different meaning. Mhm. Yes. And where that may have been, you know, out of your belly, flows living water. Where that may have been an ambiguous sort of statement that I would just kind of gloss over before and not try to really name it or really understand what's going on there. It means something different to me now. And when I read about my heart, I think differently about it now. And I've transferred these two things to these two things. It makes a difference in how you read the scriptures. And again, I'm not claiming that we're wrong and we're stupid and we shouldn't think this way. It's fine. You know, it's fine to categorize things in different ways. Different people categorize things different ways. This pulpit could be described in so many different ways, and different people would describe it different ways, and none of them are right and none of them are wrong. They're all okay. But it's good to understand the different ways, right? And not just hear somebody say the pulpit and I automatically think what I mean by pulpit and give no care whatsoever to what they actually mean by that. That wouldn't be very good. It's better if I understand the different ways of looking at things. I could say this pulpit is a wooden box. It's open on the end. It's got shelves. It's 4 feet high, 16 inches wide, maybe 20. And somebody else could say, oh, the pulpit, that's the place from which the scriptures are taught. That's the place where we hear the word of the Lord. Which one's right? They're both right. It's fine. It's okay. Both of those definitions have their benefits and their weaknesses. But isn't it better if I understand, if somebody says pulpit, what they're talking about? Are you talking about a wooden box with shelves that's 4 feet high? Or are you talking about the place from which the scriptures are shared or whatever? Or any other definition? Isn't it better if I understand what the speaker means and not just automatically superimpose my concept onto your words, God? So there's something about our belly that is mystically, mysteriously tied up with fasting. That part of us that interfaces with the Spirit of God in a mysterious, deep way that our minds can't necessarily describe or get a hold of or define. Our heart, what we call heart, is deeply tied into fasting. That's where fasting lives. It lives in our belly, in our heart, what we call heart. That's if that's true, and I can't think of any way that it's not. Wow, my goodness.
It reconciles a lot of ideas about fasting and been overlooked.
Mm-hmm. It's again this claim that I'm making is one of these doors that you open and you look in and there's 100 doors. You open any of those and there's 100 more doors times 100 times 100 times 100. It's bottomless. And this is one of those things, this concept that I'm proposing. It's not something that will change your outlook by hearing me speak. or by going, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," and moving on. It's an understanding, and this has been my experience with years now, years of trying to change the way I think, change the way I see the world. I'm trying to move not out of the universe, but I'm trying to add the cosmos to my understanding. I want to live in both places because there's value in both, but it's not something that happens the first time you encounter it. It's not something that comes by just understanding. It comes by practice, years and years and years. And in fact, this understanding that has jolted me so only came after literally years of fasting one day a week. It wouldn't have come any other way for me. And I put myself in your shoes. Will this make any difference to you? I don't know, because this is just a one off, you know. But for me, it's not a one off. For me, this has been something that I've been hammering, like the guitar heroes in their bedroom with their guitar. I've been hammering this. And it led me to a very unexpected place.